Intellectual property. It's something that most businesses don't know they've got, or if they've got it, they don't know what to do with it. And they don't know how to either get income from their intellectual property or build wealth in their business from intellectual property. There are three types of property. Real property, which is your land and whatever's thereon. There's your personal property, all this kind of kit. And there's a third one, intellectual property. Three types of property. Now, most people know about the first two. So most people know about real property. See it on the balance sheet, fixed assets. First one, Roy, land and buildings quite often. Yeah? Personal. How's it go? Land and buildings, fixtures and fittings, plant and machinery, vehicles. Yeah? They're the personal property bits. But rarely do I see intellectual property on there. Because it's then a very small part, it kind of gets lost. And it's what I call a hidden asset. Because there are lots of things that you can do with intellectual property that are tax efficient, for example. You can, as an asset, you can buy and sell, and you can rent it out. Very few people do it. A lot of people now are starting to invest in intellectual property. Domain names. Does anybody know the most expensive domain name sold? Sex.com. Anybody know how much it was? 32 million euros. Wow. How long do we buy them for?
2 years.
And a .com?
1 year. Wow.
1 year or whatever. So sex.com, 32 million. And does anybody own it forever? No. You rent it. Exactly. So that's a thing that someone's renting and will pay 32 million euros to rent. Would we ever have thought that that would happen with something to rent for a year or 2 years at a time to sell for that amount of money? And therefore, should we all be then looking at intellectual property that we've got and developing it then for the future? That's what I do with business owners. So I work with business owners to identify any hidden assets that they've currently got that they might not be using. So they might have a domain name that is worth a lot of money to someone else that they perhaps don't need, and that can free up some cash. They could do all sorts of things with it so that they can add stuff to the domain name and then rent that. So a lot of people are in the position where they want to then exit then with some online activity. Have you looked into what's the most tax efficient way to exit your business with that online facility? So there are tax efficient and tax inefficient ways of holding different aspects of whether it's personal property or intellectual property. And for example, a domain name is personal property, not intellectual property, and with different tax treatments. And you can do different things then with the domain name. So if your domain name is ranked, is it organically ranked? Yeah. So the fact that you've then got an organically ranked site, it might be worth as a standalone or in a bundle than with your business. So last week, new client had a business similar, offline, a bit of online. Their business then, if exited, would be worth about £80,000. It had it valued. In restructuring then with their online offerings, in 5 years' time, their total will be £500,000. So I deal with all the high street banks. I deal with all the major finance companies. I also deal with the revenue on intellectual property. Lenders don't laugh at intellectual property as long as it has, you know, a kosher valuation. And it, of course, then beefs up your balance sheet. Why should they laugh at intellectual property? Perfectly good legal classification of property, just like real property, just like personal property. You can do the same stuff with intellectual property as you can do with real property. No different. But it's misunderstood by a lot of business owners. And people will pay for systems, information, anything that would save them money, shortcuts, expertise, so on and so forth. And you can package that up and you can do stuff with it. You can sell information. And in America, it's the big boom thing, selling information. Software's easy to commercialise in terms of identifying the marketplace and so on. That's what I specialise in terms of the technique for doing it, to maximise income and capital. What's the difference? Why do we differentiate between income and capital? Tax purposes, yeah, absolutely. So how much tax do we pay on capital gains? 18 or 28, or 0 for the first 10,100, or 10% for the first, how much? 5 million. So you can get 5 million squiddles and pay 10% tax. Does that not sound a good deal? So the 5 million at 10%, you can do any number of transactions and it accumulates to 5 million at 10%. Now that's worth having, and you bundle it up with intellectual property, and that is cute. The devil is in the detail, in the preparation, that you do have to plan it from when you start so that you are developing the right thing then that has the commercial value. And that's the point, is you can retain ownership just as you do with a house and rent it out, on a short-term tenancy. Exactly the same. Intellectual property has the same rules as real property, as personal property. And if you put that, mix and match it with trust law and trusts, a trust can own it offshore. You can get all kinds of tax advantages as well with that. It's worth looking at. And there's no inheritance tax for how many years? 120. They really are hidden assets. And it's the commercialisation of, it's the question about who will pay for the use of what I've got. And the use of can generate income during your business lifetime. And it's the old thing about fresh eyes, somebody looking at it who doesn't know your industry going, well, surely that must be of value to someone, and so on. Because I go into businesses and I just have a nose for it. Oh, somebody will pay stuff for that. Oh, that. You can be doing all of this and lots of different packages and levels, and it's the business within a business idea. Because we kind of have this humility, don't we, to think that, well, surely there must be loads of other people who do what I do. Now, supposing there are loads of other people that do what you do, are they thinking, who will pay me for that? If you're the only one who's thought of it in your industry, others might have it, but they're not offering it because they just haven't thought about it.